Again, thank you to Rabbi Kassel for being here and for being our support for all of us for all these years. And we're excited to take what we do to the next level. B'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God. It's all been the help of God right until this minute, with this house, with everything that's here. And we really believe that with big minds, big dreams, like one rabbi once said, I may be dreaming, but I'm awake. You know, and it's an important thing for us to dream and be awake, meaning not to be dreaming and you know what, but dreaming and be awake. You know, you're focused and you dream big, and that's what we do. We want to really take this organization to the next level. And thank you, Chaz. Thank you, Kevin, for taking on this new initiative, and for the many more. Thank you to all the people that are helping us with the Hanukkah event. And Acharon Chaviv, thank you to my dear wife for everything she does. Okay, so we are doing Pirkei Avot, Wisdom for Life. We don't have that much time, but I do want to share with you some wisdom, so bear with me. And hopefully you'll leave tonight inspired with something that you can use for life. So here's a scenario that can happen. You're in a Facebook group, or maybe you don't have Facebook, Instagram group. Is there such a thing?
No.
Okay, not yet. There's a chat. Okay, yeah, maybe that's okay. You can get group chat on Instagram.
Okay. Someone's going to make $1 million from that idea.
Yeah, no, it's not that kind of thing. So you're on a group chat and somebody shares a joke that, let's say, Hanukkah's coming up. So you know the meme where they say Happy Hanukkah, but you know Hanukkah in Hebrew is spelled one way, but in English it's spelled in multiple ways. So you've got the Hanukkah with the H-A-N-U double K-A-H. Then you've got the Hanukkah with a C-H-A-N-U-K-A. Did I just say UK? Right. Then you've got a whole list of all these different names. So you know that meme. Have you ever seen that meme? And someone's got like Happy Hanukkah, or whatever it is, you know, Happy Hanukkah. So, I don't know if you've ever seen a meme or something that you've seen. It's an oldie, right? And someone sends it to you as if it's a newie. You know, and you're like, I've seen that last year. So what do you do? What do you do? So there's always one dude that ruins the fun, you know, spoiler. And what does he say? Oldie, do, right? I've seen that already.
I've got this picture that says, now that's what I call the meme I've seen 3 times before.
Oh, there you go. Now that's the next level. You send another meme answering that meme, how ridiculous that meme was. So that's another whole level. But let's say you're on a date with someone and they tell you that they heard something that you already knew about. Like, did you hear Dave got engaged? And you knew about Dave being engaged, but you know, you're on a date and it's the first thing she tells you. So obviously she's excited to tell you. So what do? Right? So naturally, our tendency is to say, oh yeah, I've heard that already. And then the other side is like, oh, you know, because they were excited to tell you about something that they really wanted to tell you. What should we do? We shouldn't lie and say, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's the funniest meme I've ever seen in my life. Even though you've seen it for the past 20 years, right? Or, oh my gosh, that's the best news. I've never heard such good news. What should you do? You shouldn't lie, but you shouldn't also say, it's an oldie. I've heard that already. Why? Because that person made the effort to tell you. You're like ruining the excitement. You're like popping their balloon, if that's the right way of saying it. You killed the vibe, right? They were all high, you know, and then you came along and you ruined it. So this is what it says, and I want you to tell me what you think. Listen to this. This is one of the statements. We're on Mishnah number 9, the 9th statement of the Pirkei Avot, Ethics of a Father's Wisdom for Life. Look what it says. Shimon ben Shattach, and we'll tell you about this rabbi himself. Shimon ben Shattach, Shimon the son of Shattach, used to say, Have marbe lachkor et ha'edim. Always investigate the witnesses. Not just always, but increase your investigation with the witnesses. So the basic explanation is, you have a court case and there are two witnesses in front of you. Don't just come to conclusions very quickly. Take your time, investigate each side. There's an argument going on and you're getting pulled in between. Or let's say you're a life coach and you're here to help somebody. Don't just come to conclusions very quickly. Take your time. Let's see both sides. You know, a lot of times when there's an argument, right, both sides are exaggerating the side, right? You especially with marriage in general, but with other things as well. You go to one side, he says his side of the argument, it seems like he's perfect. You go to the other side, his side of the argument, he's perfect. You know, each person exaggerates their side a little bit till the fact that each side is on their perfection. You know, so this is what it says. You have witnesses. Increase your investigation of the witnesses. That's the basic explanation. But there is another explanation that our rabbis give us. Rabbeinu Yonah and many of our rabbis have said another explanation. There's another explanation. Listen to this. It's beautiful. We have a rule in Judaism. If the court already heard witnesses, for instance with celebrating the new month, we used to rely on witnesses until we made a special calendar, but we relied on witnesses for a reason. There was a reason why we relied on witnesses for the moon. But we did rely on witnesses to tell us when the new moon came. And once the witnesses came, what happens if another set of witnesses, they traveled, they went to sea, they went to far up north, they come back, and they tell you, hey, we saw the moon. We saw the new moon. But you already just saw two witnesses. Once you have two, you don't need more. What should you do? Tell them, oh, we've already heard the witness case already. We've already heard the case already. No. According to Judaism, if there was a story where there were two witnesses already came and the case has been finished, done, if there's another 10 witnesses that come after, you still listen to those witnesses again. Why?
Even if they all say the same thing?
Even if they're all saying the same thing, and we've already come to the conclusion from the first two.
Just in case.
Well, they're going to say the same thing.
What's the principle? Is it to be fair to people?
Respect. Participation trophies.
Somewhat, yes. Because if we say, we've already heard it already, they're never going to bother coming again. They're never going to make the effort again. So we don't say, we heard it already. How does that translate to life? Well, just like in court, and that's a case, court is a real life case, right? That's a real thing. Just like in court, the rabbi, the judge will sit and spend an extra hour listening to the whole case again, even though he knows all the more so with us in life. Even though I know the case, even though I know the story, listen to the story again. Somebody, my child comes to the table and says something I know. Bad dad if I go, I've heard that already. Bad. The right thing to do is listen, and listen as if it's new. Am I lying? No. If it's beautiful, why wouldn't I want to hear it again? There's something special about truth. Truth is something that can be heard many times. If it's not truth, but if it's real, like if you watch a story that is sharing a very powerful message, like a true message, right? Then you're willing to watch it multiple times or listen or read it multiple times. But something that's just fabricate, how many times can you be in it, right? There's a limit. Something which is of truth, you can hear it many, many times. And that's what it says here. Be careful. Even if you've heard the witnesses already, listen to them again. So that's the genius of that statement, which applies to so much in life. Not only to give people the patience and give them the time, but also to, even if you've heard the case already, listen to it again. And then this rabbi, Shimon ben Shatach, says like this: once you've listened to the case and you've listened a long time, you have another issue. By listening a long time, you're asking a lot of questions, then the person that's the witness is going to listen into your words, and he's going to say, that's what you're asking? You're asking all these questions? I want to know. I know exactly what you're trying to get to, so I'm going to answer based on what you're saying. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a business, okay, and you want to hire someone, but you want to know if they're fit for the job, so you ask certain questions. You can't give off the image of exactly what you want from that person. Why? Because if you give an image of exactly what, then they're going to say, I can do that. Right? They're going to tell you, if you give off exactly the information of what you want, then they're just going to say, yeah, that's exactly what I can do, and I'll show you. And the idea is, right, the way to bring someone in, if you've got the upper hand in any situation, the best thing to do is to not give off all the information. I'll give you another example. If, let's say, I'm donating money, I'm giving a donation to a special cause. I have a lot of money and I want to donate to a cause. Now, if I give off the image very clearly of what I want to give to the cause and what program, what type of thing I want, so then what's going to happen? Everyone's going to come to me and say, I can do exactly that for you. I'll do exactly that for you. Sometimes it's better to hold back a little bit, not to give off the exact image of what you want, so that the person in front of you can really be seen if he's going to be able to do what you're able to offer. Does that make sense? It's not always good to give absolute clarity of what you want if you've got the upper hand, because that way they're going to take advantage and fit into exactly what you want, which is maybe they're not fitting for it. Right? Does that make sense? So for instance, in a business, I would say, or whether it's a knife or in many other areas, I would say that the most important thing is to, you have somewhat of a job description, but then when you actually, in reality, you want to see how that person will do. Give them a chance, give them some time, give them an opportunity, see how they actually do what you want from them. Not just tell them, hey, this is what I want, can you do it? Well, of course they're going to say, yes, I can do it. But it's also about seeing them in practice, seeing them in theory, not just in theory, but seeing them in practice as well. Are there any questions about this idea? Any thoughts? Okay. I want to continue and tell you some, yes?
This is an added thought. Sometimes the reason you want multiple witnesses is because the first people weren't being honest with you. If you look at Caleb and the spies when they were going to Israel, there's a lot that lied. The spies are coming back saying, "Oh, there's giants or all these things." So I think sometimes you need multiple witnesses too.
That's a different case. If you have witnesses that come to falsify the original witnesses, then those witnesses are necessary. That's a different case.
Okay.
We're talking about witnesses that are coming to say the same thing of witnesses that already were with us. So in that case, we already heard witnesses, it's fine. But we still would spend an entire day, or even a lot longer, to investigate the new witnesses, just to show that no one is pushed aside, right? Even your words are valuable. And that should tell us something very powerful about our lives too. So a lot of times we hear things from people that we already knew. It takes a sense of humility to sit there as if it's new and show your interest. Yes, it's a sense of, it's a strength, it's a maturity to be able to still listen even though you know the story already. Okay, that's okay. I want to move on. I'm going to jump to another beautiful message that's here, and it's mind-blowing. The story of Hillel and Shammai. Listen to this. So remember, I told you that the times of the Talmud, or the times of the Pirkei Avot, was the times of Zugot, of pairs. And we had two different sets of rabbis in every generation during this time. At the times of the Mishnah, there's a section of time during the Talmud of what we're reading. There was Zugot. There was Av Beit Din, the head of the courts. One rabbi was the head of the courts, and one was the Nasi Yisrael, the head of the Jewish people. Hillel and Shammai was like that too. Hillel was the head of the Nasi Yisrael, the head of the Jewish people, and Shammai was the Av Beit Din, the head of the Jewish courts. Now, how did they get their position? Listen to this. They were the students of Shmaya and Avtalion. They had before them were another two pairs called Shmaya and Avtalion. Hillel and Shammai came after them. But the truth is, there was another pair that came in between the generation of Shmaya and Avtalion and Hillel and Shammai. I hope you guys are following, because it's an amazing thing. There was another pair, and they were called the Bnei Betera, this other pair, there was another pair of leaders that came before them. But they left their job. Let me tell you the story. The Talmud in Pesachim, in Pesach, in the story of Passover, the Talmud says exactly what happened. There was a pair that came before Hillel and Shammai. Who were they? Listen to this. It was before Passover. And that year, before Passover, it was Shabbat. Erev Pesach was on Shabbat. And what happened? They weren't sure what to do with the sacrifice, the lamb that they're going to sacrifice for Passover. Right? They have to, every year, when they had the temple, they will bring the lamb for Passover. Right? Everyone will bring the Paschal lamb. But they weren't sure that year what to do. Why? Because it was Shabbat, then Passover. And they weren't sure whether you're allowed to offer or bring a lamb just for a Paschal holiday. Can you do that? They're going to eat from the animal. Are you allowed to slaughter? We're not allowed to regular Shabbats slaughter animals. But are you allowed to, for the sakes of Passover, that was needed to be eaten the day before Passover, and it happened to be a Shabbat? No one knew the answer, including the two leaders of the Jewish people. No one knew what to do. And they said, you know who to go to? Go to Hillel. Hillel and Shammai, they were great students of Shmaya and Avtalion, the previous rabbis. They were great, great students. Go and ask them. And Hillel was a poor man. He was living in very poor standards. I'll tell you more about his story. He was a very poor man. Right? Hillel HaZaken, everyone has heard of Hillel. You've heard of Hillel? He was a very poor man. So they said, let's go and ask Hillel. What should we do? And Hillel said that just like the daily offering called the Tamid, it says by that offering, B'mo'ado, on its time, so too the Paschal lamb, the Torah says on its time. It needs to be at the right time. The words are the same. And he says if the words are the same, we have a rule that it's the same, and therefore even before Passover we'll bring the Paschal lamb and we eat the Paschal lamb together. That's what he said. What happened? These two rabbis before Hillel and Shammai, the Bnei Betera, they said, if that's the case, Hillel and Shammai know more than us, we're going to leave our job. And they left the highest position of the Jewish people. I mean, you've got to understand what this means. These are like the two greatest giants of the Jewish people, tremendous knowledge, and they left their job. They said, that's it, we're done. These two people that are young and poor, they're greater than us. They should take our position. And that was the case. Hillel and Shammai took the position of Bnei Betera. There's another story very similar in the Kabbalah, in Bet El. There's actually like a movie which is very similar to this story. In Bet El, which is in Jerusalem, in the old city, there's a building where all the Kabbalists used to study. Some of the greatest Kabbalists for the past hundreds of years. There was one great rabbi who came in from another country. He wasn't living in Israel, he traveled. His name was the Rashash, Rav Shimon Sharabi. Tremendous rabbi. He wrote commentary on the entire Torah. I mean, we're talking about some of the greatest minds, also in Kabbalah, in every aspect of wisdom. And he would clean the place of Bet El. He said, I want a job. He worked there. He would clean the place of Bet El. And one time there was a question that no one could answer, a Kabbalistic question that no one can answer. And the Rashash, Rav Shimon Sharabi, wrote down the response of the question. He wrote down the response of the question, and the rabbi that was the leader of that place saw the response. He said, it can't be that someone knows this so well. It was a fantastic response. Who could it be? They found out who it was. It was the Rashash, Rav Shimon Sharabi, and he left his position and gave his position away. What do we learn from that? We learn the sense of humility, right? The ability for somebody who's at the highest position to say, I don't need the leadership permission just to be a title. I want what's truth in the world. And therefore, if I find somebody who's greater than me in knowledge and could do my position better than me, I'll rather him and I'll leave my position. Tremendous giants. Who can do that today? Which kind of person would say, you know what? This person's better than me to be a president. I'm leaving my job. Let that person be a president. You think this is going to happen? Today it's all about titles and leadership. But in the times of our great leaders throughout our history, that wasn't the case. It was exactly the opposite. They left their position and their names are not even known as much. One time in the story that these rabbis are spoken about, Bnei Betera. But the real people that came after them was Hillel and Shammai. It's amazing. Who was Hillel? You heard of Hillel, right? We hear that name all the time. There's an organization that's called Hillel. Who is Hillel? Let me tell you a little bit about Hillel. Hillel was a poor man. At the age of 40, he came into Israel. He died at 120. At the age of 40, he came into the land of Israel. From outside, he lived in Bavel. And he moved, he traveled to Israel. And he had no money. So what did he do? He became a wood chopper. And to be a wood chopper, trust me, the income is pretty low. There's a lot of wood everywhere. Everyone needs it, but the income's very low. He would make what the Talmud said was 1 trufik a day. Tiny, small amount of money. And the Talmud in Shabbat says that every day, at the end of his day of work, he would travel to the study hall of Shmaya and Avtalion, the rabbis that came before him, 2 generations before. Shmaya and Avtalion, he would sit and study by Shmaya and Avtalion. Those were his rabbis. In order to study in this study hall, there wasn't just free food, free tacos, free fruits, fruit carts, no such thing. In those days, you want to come into the study hall, not only did you have to listen to someone speak, you had to pay to get in. Why? Well, the building needs to have upkeep. You have to heat the building, right? There's a lot of work that kept the building going. People would pay to come in. How much did it cost? Half a trufik. Half the amount that Hillel was making a day. Nothing. And what happened? What happened? Let me tell you. One day, Hillel says, every day he goes to the class, he goes to listen to shiur, the lectures of the rabbi at the end of his day of work. He didn't want to miss a day. Never. There was one thing, it says in Jewish teaching, Aseh Torat Chakeva. Jewish learning needs to be done every day, without fail. You have to always try and learn something every day. It's one of the basic values of Judaism, that we have to learn something every day, something new every day. Our minds need to be learning something new every day. So, every day he would go to this place at the end of his day of work. And one day he'd never made any money. He didn't have enough money. It would cost half a trufik, half of this coin, to get in to the study hall at night. The security guard at the front will take half of his income. The other half of the income he would use for his family to eat and to survive. He comes knocking at the door. He doesn't have a coin. They said, I'm sorry, no entry. It was a cold day in Jerusalem. He goes up to the rooftop. He was desperate to hear the teachings, the wisdom. So he goes up to the rooftop and there's like a sunroof. So the next morning, the rabbis, Shmaya and Avtalion, throughout the day, they're looking, they say, it's so dark in here, what's going on? It's dark. Why is the light not coming through the sunroof? Eventually they look up and they realize that there's a figure of a human being. It's covered, it wasn't a see-through sunroof, but they see a figure of a human. They say, no, what's going on? They go up there, there was snow. They remove the snow and they find Hillel unconscious. He lost consciousness. And already Shabbat was starting, they bring him down, they light a fire and they put him next to the fire. Even on Shabbat, even though we keep Shabbat, you're allowed to break Shabbat in order to save someone's life. They lit the fire, they put him next to the fire and they started heating him up. And they said it's worthy to break Shabbat for this great rabbi, Hillel. So that's who Hillel was, dedication to study.
Was he a rabbi at that point or still just a student?
Well, he would consider himself a student. What's a rabbi? A teacher, meaning taking on the position. I missed another study. Yeah. I missed another study that says hate leadership, hate being a rabbi, hate any form of authority, love the work, but hate the titles. So There's another statement that we missed. But maybe we'll study another time. But it says, hate this title. A person should always aim to work, never to be at the top. What's the point? You be at the top, then you get lazy and you don't work. A person should always love the job itself and not to aim for the title at the top. That doesn't mean that if there's no one else to do it, that you shouldn't do it. But just know that that's not the ideal place to be. The ideal place to be is that you're not bored, that you're still working, or that you're not in a place of authority just for the sake of authority. It's the worst thing for somebody. Okay, anyway, so Hillel was studying. That's all he wanted. He gets pulled down and they save him. But I'm going to tell you another story about Hillel. Not only was he a man that put his time to study Torah, but he was also a man of humility. It says that a person, Hillel and Shammai, were the two leaders of the Jewish people. Hillel was the leader of the Jewish people. Shammai was the leader of the courts. They used to argue a lot. Not argue in terms of fighting, but argue in study, in the way of thinking. It says a person should always be humble like Hillel and not particular like Shammai. Le'olam yehe adam anavtan kehillel. A person should always be humble like Hillel and not a kapdan keshammai. Why? Who was Shammai? They both were good people. Shammai was also good. He just stood for truth. If someone came to him and was not being truthful, I don't want to talk to you. He was very strict. He stood up for truth. Hillel, even though he stood up for truth, he also did it in a very soft manner. He had the ability to do it in a very soft manner. Listen to this. So it says, I'm reading the Talmud. It says like this in the Talmud in Shabbat. A person should always be humble like Hillel and not like Shammai. Why? There's a story of two people that they were arguing. They were talking about the leader of the Jewish people. You know, like today, everyone talks about the president or the leader, right? So they were discussing. And one said to the other, you don't know? This Hillel is the most humble rabbi of all history. There's no one humble like him. So the other one says, yeah, right. No such thing. I tell you, we're all human beings. Human beings also can get annoyed. What do you mean? He's humble. He can never get upset. He can never get frustrated. He can never get angry. Of course he can. He's human like everyone else. So what did the other one do? He says, listen, he's so humble, I'm willing to put a bet. 400 coins. Expensive amount of money. Thousands of dollars of today. Bitcoins, let's say. 400 Bitcoins. I put down that you'll never be able to make him angry. You'll never be able to make him angry. So what did he say? He says, what, really? That much money? Of course, he's human. I'm going to do it. Done. Let's play the bet. I'm going to do it. So he says, when's the busiest time for the Jewish people? When do you think is the busiest time of the week? Just before Shabbat.
I was about to say Rosh Hashanah.
Well, that's true, but during the week. That's why I said every week. So during the week, just before Shabbat. Before Shabbat, Hillel would go into the bathhouse, he would wash himself, and he'd come out. Not long before Shabbat, it says that you should always, for Shabbat, you don't shower in the morning. For Shabbat, you shower just before Shabbat. You know, you get fresh, feel good. Eat the challah, have the wine, you eat good, you drink good, you dress good, you smell good. Woo! Right? And that's it. So Hillel was in his in the bathhouse. He said, that's the time that I'm going to go. Half an hour before Shabbat and drive him crazy. So he goes running to the house of Hillel, where he lived, and he starts screaming at the top of his lungs, Mi kan Hillel? Is Hillel here? Is Hillel here? This is the leader of the Jewish people. You know, you call him a rabbi, something. Hillel, is he here? Is he here? And he screams at the top of his lungs. Obviously, Hillel's hearing, he's in the bathhouse. He's hearing someone screaming at the top of his lungs. What's he going to do? He says to himself, wait a second, obviously he's desperate. He didn't say to himself, hey, he's not speaking to me nicely. Why is he screaming like that? It must be something's important. Immediately he puts on his cloak, his robe, and he comes out and he says, it's me, I am Hillel. And the language of the Gemara, of the Talmud, constantly he says the word Beni, my son. My son, I'm here. I'm here, my son. So he says to him like this, listen to this. He says like this, I have a question to ask you. You're Hillel? Yes, I'm Hillel, my son. He says, I have a question. He says, ask, my son, ask, whatever you want. Why is it that the eyes of the Talmudiyin, Tarutot, they're wider than normal? Okay? Wait, before you jump. Okay? Why is it that the Talmudiyin people, they are people that lived in Syria, a certain part of Syria, back then, why are their eyes wider? He says to him, Amalo, do you think I have time to answer questions? Racist questions also at the same time? What the heck is going on? He says to him, Beni, my son, She'ela gedola sha'alta. You're asking a great question with all seriousness. And he says, Mipnei shedarin ben acholot. Each person adapts to the environment. In that place, there's a lot of sands, and in order to adapt to the environment, that's how people live, that's how their body is. This person, Hillel goes back in to the bathhouse, and that's it, done. This guy waits another few moments, and then starts screaming again. Mikan Hillel, where's Hillel, where's Hillel? He starts screaming again. Hillel's hearing the guys. What can it be? He puts on his cloak, he comes back out, and he says, my son, what do you want? He says to him, I have a great question to ask. He says to him, okay, ask the question, my son, ask it. So he says, I'm sorry if this offends anyone, but he says like this, why is it that the feet of the people that live in Africa are wider? He says to him in response, Beni, my son, she'ela gedola sha'alta. A good question you're asking. And he says, Mipnei shedarim ben bitzei ma'im. They live in a lot of marshlands. It's harder to walk there. And in order to adapt to that environment, that's how people that's how people became. So he asks him another question. Okay. Eventually, he says to him, Rabbi, he sees how calm he is. Even minutes before Shabbat, he sees he's so calm. He says to him, She'elot harbe yesh lishol. I've got many more questions to ask, Rabbi. I have many more. But I'm scared, maybe you're going to get upset with me. He saw that it's so rude, asking him all these questions. Maybe you're going to get upset with me. The rabbi made sure he looks more comfortable, and he sat down next to him. Nit'atef v'yatza. It says like this. Nit'atef v'yashav lefanav. He wrapped himself, made himself more comfortable and dressed better, and he sat down in front of him. He says, I'm here for you. Beni, matam avakesh, my son, what do you want? Hey, look at this. He says to him like this, any questions that you have to ask, please ask me. Anything you want in the world, do you have any questions, please ask me. So he looks at him and he says, Amalo, he says back to him, are you Hillel that everyone calls the leader of the Jewish people? He says, yes, I am Hillel. He says back to him, if you are Hillel, there should be no one like you ever again. He says, why? But look how he answers him. Amalo mipnei ma, my son, why would you ask such a question? He never said, what do you mean? How dare you? I've given you all my time. I've sat with you. No. My son, why are you asking this question? And he says, because of you, I lost 400 bitcoins. Right? So he says to him, be calm, my son. Hevei zahir beruchacha, please be calm. It's worth it for Hillel to lose 400 zuz and another 400 zuz on your account. But as long as Hillel doesn't get angry. It's worth it for me to lose another 400, for somebody to lose on my behalf 400 and another 400. As much as I care about people, it's worth it for you to lose 400 and another 400 as long as I never get angry. That was the story of Hillel. So that's the rabbis say, a person should always be humble like Hillel. What does that mean? That no matter what question people ask you, even if you're the greatest of the great, the expectations are very high. You give the person the time of the day. By the way, this Talmud teaches me another lesson. Right? The concept of evolution. although we believe in evolution, right? We do believe in evolution, but on a micro level. For sure on a micro level, which means that humans are able, in order to survive, it's a form of mechanism, of survival mechanism or adaptation, that we adapt to our environment. It's also a very powerful message that if our bodies actually change based on our environment over time, how important is it to make sure that we're in a good environment, right? I'm not just talking about physically, I'm talking about spiritually. If we adapt our bodies actually change over time based on the environment that we're in, imagine what that says about us spiritually. How much more in our mind, our mental health, a person must make sure that he's in a good environment, like being around someone like Hillel. But we see the greatness of Hillel. So anyway, this is what Hillel and Shammai taught. This is the words of Hillel. He says like this, and we'll finish with this. He says, be a student of Aaron. Remember Moses in the Torah and the Bible? You got Moses and Aaron. He says, be a student of Aaron. Who was the student of Aaron? Ohev Shalom, somebody who loved peace. Rodef Shalom, chased after peace. Ohev et habriot, he loved human beings. He loved all creations. Umekarvan la Torah, and brought them close to Torah. So there were multiple things. First, Ohev Shalom, love peace. What does that mean? Only first you love, then you can pursue. What does it mean that you love something? Not only that you expand yourself so it's part of the other, but you're willing to sacrifice something for the other. That's already another level of love. Right? Love is when it's so strong that you're willing to sacrifice something for the other. You see, pursuing peace is not just in theory, but it starts from within. It needs to be so strong from within that you're willing to sacrifice your own sense of embarrassment for the sake of making shalom. Not by embarrassing somebody else. We're going to see who was Aaron and who was Hillel. We just learned Hillel was the man who was really a student of Aaron. He was a man of humility. So who was Aaron? It says that when Aaron died, everyone cried, much more than when Moses died, much more than when everyone else passed away. When Aaron died, it was the greatest sorrow for the Jewish people. It says that when it was his funeral, over 80,000 young people accompanied him in the funeral with the same name as Aaron. Even during his lifetime, they took on his name, which, by the way, is one of the proofs that in Judaism we're not against calling somebody after his name, even whilst he's alive. Even though in the Ashkenazic community they don't do that, right? There's other reasons for that, but actually halachically, there's not. Throughout the Torah, we see many examples of this. This is one of them.
Wait, so there were 80,000.
In the funeral, there were millions of people. 80,000 people were named Aaron, following him in the funeral itself. All these people were named after him. Why do you name a child after somebody? Because you like them or because you hate them? Right? Because you like them, you want to learn from them, you value that person so much that you want your child to be called that name. That's how great Aaron was. Why was he so great? He loved all creations, he loved peace and pursued peace. What does that mean? So this is what the rabbis tell us. That he was willing to sacrifice himself. What does that mean? The Talmud gives examples. Let me tell you what he did. And this applies to many areas of life as well. And we'll finish with that. How do you love peace? What does that mean? This is what he would do. When he would see that there was an argument going on between two people, dispute, he would wait. First of all, we're going to learn later on. When somebody's in an argument or someone's angry, don't look at them. There's certain times, Shmuel HaKatan, we're going to learn later on, like someone's dealing with money. Hey, yo, what's up, dude? Right? That's not the time, you know. There's certain times where you don't look at people, you don't talk to them. One of them is when there's an argument. When there's a real dispute going on, unless someone's getting hurt physically, there's a different story and you're able to stop them. It's a different story. But when there's a real dispute going on, at the time of the argument, keep out. Afterwards, you can maybe help. If you feel like you can help, like Aaron, then do it. But in the time of the argument, you keep out. Also, it says that as much as it's important to tell something that's good for someone to do, as much as it's important to improve people, right? To rebuke is a good value at times. It's only if that person you know will listen to you. But if you know that person will not listen to you, it's also a mitzvah to not say anything. Right? It's a good deed to be quiet as much as it's a good deed to say something. So, listen to this. What was Aaron? Who was he? How did he pursue peace? Not by running around with a big sign saying peace, peace, peace. He lived by it. What did he do? He would see an argument, a dispute, and he would wait. After a few days, he'd go to one of them and he'd say, you don't know. You know that other guy that you had an argument with? He's so upset about it. He's broken that he got in an argument with you. Deep down, behind the scenes, he just doesn't know how to deal with it, but behind the scenes, he loves you. He really does. He knows that this whole thing was wrong and he didn't want it. And inside him, he didn't want this argument. I know it. He is, in all aspects, he wants to get back to normal again, but it's just, he doesn't know how to. He got into the dispute. So the other guy says, oh, really? That's true? I never knew. You know what? I also feel that way. I also don't feel like I can have an argument with that guy. You know, he is good. It was something that didn't work out at that time. But you know what? At the end of the day, I do get along with him. The minute he hears that guy say that, he'll go to the other person and say, you don't know what he told me. You don't know what the other guy told me. He just told me that he wishes he would never have this argument with you. He really loves you. And eventually, these guys would meet with each other and they'll be friends again. And he was a person who will bring shalom into the Jewish people, go from one person like that to the other. Positive environment. How does it take, what was he? He was Ohev Shalom. He loved peace so much that he was willing to sacrifice his own sense of shyness, embarrassment, in order to make sure there was peace between them. Well, how does this translate to life, besides for making peace with people? Well, there are areas in life where you will get, I'll give you an example. Parents-in-law. Ooh. How many arguments in couples, right, in relationships come because of in-laws? The mother-in-law is annoying me. And right, your mother.
I don't know, I'm not married yet.
I know. But one day, one day, when Be'ezat Hashem you are, everyone say Amen. When Omri gets married to the right soulmate, his beautiful soulmate, and everyone else that does, you'll meet this person, and the other side has parents that might be annoying you. It's a very, very common case. You don't live with them anymore, but they say something, and you're not sure, and there's arguments. The mother-in-law with the daughter-in-law, it's not very comfortable. This is a lot of times, a lot of cases that there could be arguments, nothing to do with the couple, but they're getting into a serious argument because of the in-laws. So what do you do? How do you fix it? You don't say, oh, they don't really mean it. My mum didn't mean it, right? Let's say it's her mother-in-law. So she goes to her husband and she says, your mother's driving me mad. So what does he say? Don't worry, my mum didn't mean it. She doesn't really talk like that. That doesn't work. What do you mean? She did. She was rude to me. Doesn't work. What do you do? How do you fix it? You say, you know what? Let me speak to her. You go to her house. You go back to your mum's house. You say, hey mum, not seen you in a while. How's it going? You know, you must have prayed. You must have done something, because my wife is incredible. She's unbelievable. My wife is amazing. She does this. She's so kind. She's so loving. You should see how much she loves everybody. Start praising your wife in front of your mother-in-law. Wow, and then...
Is that a good tactic in general?
Yes.
If someone's mad at someone else, you start only praising that person in front of them and
For sure.
being positive.
For sure. A very good tactic. I do it all the time. I don't know if you've noticed. But anyway, so you go to the mother-in-law, he goes to his mother, he says, Mom, you don't know, my wife is unbelievable. No one does that enough, but that's the way. My wife is incredible. She says, you know, I've seen, she is amazing. What's she going to say? I hate her? She'll say, you know, she is amazing. She's brilliant. She is. She's so, she does speak so nicely. The minute he hears that, he goes in his car, he runs back to his wife. He says, my dear, you don't know, I just was by my mom. You don't know what she says about you. She said that you're amazing and you're so beautiful and you're so smart, genius. And eventually, each one she says, your wife starts saying, oh, you know, your mum is amazing. She really is so nice. And it brings ahava b'neim. It brings love between them. And that's how we do it. Whether it's in any kind of thoughts between another person, we have these speculations in our mind. If you're the person that's the middle ground, that's able to break those speculations, by saying that that person, they spoke so highly of you. You go to the other one, they're unbelievable. You should have seen what they said about you. Unreal. And eventually you'll build love around you. Build love for the people around you. Now, before you ask me a question, there is a thought. How can this be honest? Was that you're going to ask?
Yeah, basically, this is manipulations.
It's manipulation.
It's
God
like
him.
It's like white lies, kind of.
In Judaism, there's certain times where it's good to twist the truth a little bit for the sake, and one of them is for the sake of peace. It's actually good to twist the truth for the sake of peace. How do we know? Because God does it himself. In the Torah, we're taught that God himself does it. And therefore, one of the greatest values of Judaism is, as much as shalom is a godly value, and as much as truth is a godly value, we want them both to come together. And therefore, we don't actually lie out straight away, but we bring out the love that person has for the other, and then we express it to the other one. Yes?
How does God lie to us?
So, God, we don't speak to God right now, right? We're not prophets or anything. But there is a story in the Torah, and it's a fascinating story of Abraham and Sarah. I spoke about this a few weeks ago. Abraham is 100 years old, and he's waiting to have a baby. And Sarah's 99 years old, and they're waiting. They never had a child. It's kind of late, right? Ain't going to have kids at 99. So, what happens? They get told through angels, okay, believe the story or not, listen to the story, at least get the message of the story, please. So the angels are coming, and they tell them, this time next year, you're going to have a son. They tell Abraham. Sarah is in the other room, and she hears. She starts laughing at, this body is going to have a child? How can that be? I'm old. I don't have a cycle anymore. And my husband is also old. How can it be? My husband's also old. He's 100 years old. We can't have kids. So she starts laughing. Later on in the Torah, the story is that God comes to Abraham in a prophecy, and he says to him, Lama zeh tzachak? Why is Sarah laughing? Why is Sarah laughing, saying that I can't have kids and that I am old? God didn't say that she said, and my husband is old. She only said, I am old. When God came, he said, why did she say I am old? Not, why did she say I am old and my husband's old? Because that would have caused arguments between Abraham and Sarah.
Even if it's true?
Even if it's true that she said, my husband is old, in order to avoid the arguments between Abraham and Sarah, when God gave a prophecy, he didn't say what Sarah actually really said. Sarah really said, my husband's old, but God didn't want to say that because that would cause an argument between a husband and wife. And meshanim et halashon mipnei hashalom. We have a rule. We could change the language a little bit for the sake of peace. For the sake of peace, we could change the language. We don't have to actually lie if we can avoid it. But we could change the language. So let's say there's two people that has an argument. If you know that that person's a good person, so you say, deep down I see that he really regrets it. He wants this. So even though it's not an outright lie, but it's b'nei shalom, mishanim et halashon. We could change the language for the sake of peace. And this is brought down multiple places in the Torah. We see it also with Joseph, multiple places. Because peace is also a value. It's a big question when you have two values conflicting. Which one do you stand for? And that's why we need a higher guidance to tell us. You've got truth fighting against peace. Which one do you choose? You've got unity fighting against the sense of individuality. Which one do you choose? Right? Communism versus capitalism. Right? Both are saying good things. Which one do you choose? In one way, we want people to have their own life. And on the other way, we want everyone to be together and unified, and people should help each other. So how do you have a middle ground? You know what the answer is? We don't have a middle ground today. We don't. But there's a way. There's a way. If you bring God into your life, you can find a middle ground. And that's the idea. You know, we have truth, but we also have peace. These are two values. One is when they conflict. There's certain times where you can change the truth for the sake of peace. Yeah.
I just think that maybe it would be more worthwhile to aspire for truth because it's subjective, whereas peace is subjective, right? People can just assume something about what peace means to them and then project it onto others, whereas truth is uniform.
Right. But isn't the oneness of all also part of that truth? The fact that we all come from one source, right? We say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. The word shalom means one, shalem, complete. When we are not unified, we are somewhat incomplete. So although you may see truth as an objective concept as opposed to shalom, but shalom is also as objective as truth because it's the sense of godliness in a way. Like at the end of the day, God is infinite. And we understand that we're all part of that one. So in this world, because it's a finite world and everything seems separated, but really, from a Jewish perspective, we're all unified in a certain sense, and we have to bring that unity. That's our point in this world, is to bring ourselves with different energies together. Unity is a very important aspect of Judaism as well, right? There's a lot to think about in that, and it's beautiful what you're saying. Truth does seem to be more objective, but I would argue that peace is as objective, right? Because it also comes from that oneness. There's more, but for now, that's as much as I can say. Anyone else? Questions, ideas, thoughts? All right, so I think that was fun. Thank you.